It was night when he at last found the building he was looking for, but it was not really dark. All the lights along the street and the hundreds of lights that shone out the windows of every building made it as light as day, almost. He had never seen so many lights in all his life. It was not like any night he had known, and he wished it were darker, so he could hide and not be seen as he walked into the entrance hall of the tall white building called Seabird. He had of course thought that the family he knew lived in it alone, but it was as crowded with strangers as a bath depot or a raft. A man stood at an inner door, letting people in, and then shutting it so that they disappeared abruptly. Then, as suddenly, the door was flung open again, and quite a different crowd poured out. Harry couldn't understand it, but when he asked the man if the family he knew was there, the man said, "Get in, 10th floor." And he was pushed into a tiny cell along with a dozen people. The door was shut on them. The man pressed a button in the wall, and the little wooden cell shot upwards with a sickening lurch. Before Harry could get over the shock, it had come to a stop. The door was flung open, and the man waved him out. "Number 102, he said, shut the door and disappeared. Now Harry was in the heart of the building. He looked about him and saw nothing but shut doors. He went up close to them to study the numbers, and finally found one that had 102 on it in brass letters. He banged and hammered on it for quite a while before it was opened by a tall man in white trousers and high-collared white coat. "Why are you banging, idiot? Don't you see the bell?" he shouted. Harry looked up to see if there were a bell hanging from the lintel, but there was nothing there. "No," he said in a low voice. "Where is it?" "Here, fool!" said the man angrily, and putting his finger on a white button beside the door frame, made it scream suddenly and shrilly. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "I'm looking for work," Harry whispered. "I wish to stay." This seemed to annoy the man, even frighten him. Go away!" he shouted. "There is no work for you here. The Sahib has plenty of servants already. He doesn't need another one. Not a boy from Thule, certainly. Go, there is no work, and nowhere for you to stay," he repeated harshly, and stepping back, shut the door firmly. There was nothing Harry could do. Here he stood wondering where he would go next, and asking himself why he had ever come to this frightening, friendless place, when a man who sat on a high stool by the entrance called him, saying, "What do you want? Who have you come to see?" They are not here," Harry said, shaking his head. "They have gone, the family at 102. The man paid him no more attention. He was busy talking to people who came and went, and shouting at some small boys who were playing marbles in the stairs, where everyone bumped into them and tripped on the marbles. The men shouted at them to go and play elsewhere, but he had a friendly gleam in his eyes, and they laughed at him. Much later, when the hall was emptier, he turned and saw Harry still standing in the corner and walked across to him. "Haven't you got anywhere to go?" he asked. Harry shook his head without speaking. He was too tired, too hungry, too weak and frightened to move or speak. Said the man, and stared at him ruminatively. Then, "Tell you what," he said with unexpected friendliness. "I go off duty in half an hour when the night watchman takes over from me. I'm going down to Gualia Tank, where I live. I'll take you along to a friend of mine, who will give you a meal. You're hungry, aren't you?" Harry gazed at him, hardly daring to believe that someone could be kind or helpful. The man put his hand out and patted him on the shoulder. "Wait a bit," he said. Adapted from The Village by the Sea, 1982, by Anita Dise.